Hi there. This is video 5 of the Taking Off the Leash video series. And this series, again, is introducing the topics that we're going to explore in my 12-month circle, Awakening Our Woman Line. And whether or not you are interested in the circle, I hope that you're finding value in these videos. Today, this is the 5th video, and today I'm going to talk about mother wounds and what those are and the work of healing them. So, our mother wounds are both the literal or figurative, whatever, wounding that we receive from our actual mothers or from the women who cared for us. And it is tangled up with our patriarchal culture. So what I mean by that is it's the ways in which our mothers perpetuated the training of our patriarchal culture. The ways our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, female teachers, so on, perpetuated the stories of how we're not enough, how we're too much, how we need to keep striving, how we need to catch up with the Joneses, how we aren't good enough in ourselves, how we're broken, right? So that's what the mother wound is about. It's not just about how our moms hurt our feelings or were mean to us in whatever ways they were. It's not just that piece of it. It is deeply tied to our culture and that training that we're given as females. It's been passed down. These mother wounds have been passed down for generations, right? For millennium, in fact. It has been documented that our last real egalitarian culture was about 6,000 years ago. So that means that about 6,000 years ago is when patriarchy started to take hold and women were no longer considered important parts of society. They were considered property. They were considered not to have value of their own. They only had value as they were attached to their husband, their brother, their father. We're still living with remnants of this today, right? One of the ways this wounding shows up is in the ways we judge other women and the way we pass on that wounding to our daughters, our nieces, kids we teach or are in contact, but also how we pass that on to other mothers, other female coworkers, the women at the grocery store, how whatever women we come in contact with. And it is the way that we judge them and the way we don't think they are enough. They aren't good enough, right? Or they aren't doing good enough, or they could do better. It's another aspect of this wounding. So yes, it is about our actual biological or adoptive mothers, and it's so much greater than that. It is really about being in a culture that doesn't value women. It's about being in a culture that considers us unimportant, considers us to be accessories to the men we're attached with. And then if we don't attach ourselves to men, right, then we really don't have any sort of power, right? Or we become one of the guys, so to speak. And that is part of this wounding too, right? Is not feeling strong and not feeling powerful as a woman. feeling like we have to, in the 80s, wear the great big shoulder pads, right? To have those manly shoulders. What the fuck was that fashion statement, right? Uh, but it was a masking. It was a masking and a covering up of our physical femininity, our physical femaleness, a way to try and hide that because these little shoulders are weak and can't carry the weight of the world, right? Yeah, bullshit, right? We do carry the weight of the world. We have very strong shoulders just because they're not broad. Anyways, so that is what the mother wound is about. Often we get really focused in on our relationships with our actual mothers. Mother-daughter relationships are complex at best. um, there's so many layers in our relationships with our moms. Even when we have a really good and relatively healthy relationship with our mom, there are still layers and layers and layers. And a lot of that, and that is because we have these millennium of training and being told how we should be, and this millennium of rape and torture and abuse and murder and children dying and men dying and not being valued of our own accord, right? That's millenniums worth of that stuff being passed down to us. The epigenetics is a study of our genetics. And one of the things that's been found in recent years is that there is an actual trauma marker in our DNA. And it is mutable, it's changeable, right? If we do healing work, if we are able to process through trauma, and if we don't or can't, and we have children, right, it's passed down to them. There's also been research, as I've mentioned, I believe I've mentioned before, research that has found the link to our body and our body-mind health and how those are intricately linked. Because we have science to prove it now, right? And because we can't trust our own knowing, our own guts, that this was true. Okay, right, whatever. And it's nice to have that backup, right? It's nice to be able to say, yeah, I knew that. I knew that. Didn't need, all the researchers to figure that out. But thank you for, for holding up what I believed to be true, what I knew to be true. The mother wounds, that's the other part of it, is that it disconnects us from our body. It disconnects us from our intuition. It disconnects us from trusting ourselves, right? Because there's no proof. Because our emotions are illogical. Because we need to follow specific rules, even if they don't feel right to us, right? We have to follow the specific rules of our culture in order for our culture to be maintained and for it to perpetuate itself. It's how systems work, right? They want to keep going just as they are. Systems don't want to be altered. They really don't. They will fight. They will find ways to fight tooth and nail to being altered. Now they may fight the altering, but that doesn't mean they can't be altered. And we look at history, this is true. There have been shifts in our culture. They're baby fucking steps. They're little tiny pieces. And it is happening. And it is continuing to happen as more and more and more of us become aware and become awake to not only what we have taken in to be true about ourselves, but what we have taken in to be true about other people. That's all this mother wounding. It's all passed down over and over and over again. And it takes time and energy to heal and to undo and to make sense of. And sometimes you can't even make sense of it. Just a minute ago, I was talking about how we get really focused on our relationships with our actual mothers and the pain and the wounding that's involved there, that can be involved there. And I want to encourage us to both look at the hurts of our lived experience, absolutely, to heal those wounds as best we can, and to remember that our individual mothers are not the pinnacle of evil, right? Part of this work is developing empathy, right? Expanding our empathy, expanding our compassion, understanding that even when we had incredibly horrible mothers, and there are incredibly horrible mothers out in the world, right? I do not deny this. Even then, they were more than likely doing the absolute best that they could. That doesn't mean it was good enough. That doesn't mean that we don't get to feel our hurt and our sadness and our anger and our grief. That doesn't mean that at all. We get to feel all that. We can feel both. We can hold both. We can hold that we were really fucking hurt and betrayed by these women who gave us life, either literally giving birth to us or who raised us, who betrayed us. We can have all of those feelings about that, all of that hurt and anger, and also hold true that they probably really were doing the best they could. For whatever reasons, they couldn't get out of the cycle that they had been trained into, that they had been raised into, that they had been taught. So when we talk about mother wounding, I don't want us so focused in on a singular person that we forget the broader picture, right? Because that's a part of our own healing process. That's a part of our own development of self-compassion. Right? They go hand in hand. Having compassion for ourselves and having compassion for those who wounded us. They go right together, and we can't really have one without the other. It's easy to have compassion and empathy for people who haven't hurt us. That's easy. We can feel for them. We can want better for them. We can even offer help to them and empathy and sympathy. That's easy if they haven't hurt us, right? If we don't believe they deserve bad things because they've done bad things to us, right? That's easy. It's harder to have compassion for ourselves and for people who have harmed us in some way, who have betrayed us in one or more of the millions of ways we can be betrayed. And those two pieces are linked. Once we are able to start having compassion for the people who hurt us, we can start having compassion for ourselves and recognize the way we have hurt others without a lot of beating ourselves up or wallowing in the shame of it. Because wallowing in shame and beating ourselves up doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't resolve an issue. It doesn't heal hurt. And it leaves us stagnant. And it leaves us frozen. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful to ourselves. It's not helpful to other women in the world. It's not helpful to our children or our nieces or our nephews or our grandbabies. It's not helpful. Being frozen doesn't do anything. It only perpetuates the pain and the healing, or the pain and not the healing. This is not to say that we can just like wake up one morning and go, you know what? I'm just going to have self-compassion and I'm going to have compassion for all the people who hurt me in my life. Like, I'm cool now. I can see their side of it. I can see how culture has impacted us, blah, 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 right? I am making amends where I can make amends with those I have hurt and da, 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 right? We don't wake up one day and just, there we go. That's not how it works, right? It is a process. And it's a back and forth and an up and down. I like to think of it as a 3D spiral, right? And sometimes we go this way, and sometimes we go this way, right? And there's no, and sometimes we're just going down or up or down, right? There's no, it's not a linear path at all. What you will notice, the more you do this work, the more you do this healing work of your mother wounds, of releasing what we've soaked in of the training of our culture. As we let those things go, you will find, I have found, that we don't do as much backtracking, right? The back and forth isn't as dramatic. The pendulum doesn't swing as far on either side. And we start to become more like this. Oh, there we go. More like this instead of like this all over the place, right? And by this and this, I mean both our emotions and our emotional reactions to things, and also our dualistic thinking of, oh, we're bad people, oh, we're good people, oh, we're bad people, oh, we're good people, right? We aren't in that anymore. We start to realize I'm a person and I'm flawed and I make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes I do really great stuff. And that's the way it is, right? Because I'm a person. And my mother was a person, and my aunt was a person, and my grandma was a person. My dad was a person. You know, I don't talk a lot about men or how men are impacted by our culture, because I don't work with a lot of men. I work with some men, but my circles are almost always all women, and they are trained in this culture just like we are, right? They get a different flavor of it. They have a little more privilege to walk through the world than we get. But they still get the training. They still get the training of how they aren't enough, how they are too much, how they don't matter, right? They still get that. It's not only focused on women. It's focused on all of us. As we can see how much our culture impacts us, how much the systems are rigged, how much it affects our thinking and our doing, we can unravel it. And we can stop blaming, which is huge. It's huge. We can't blame. We can't blame our mothers for who we are, right? We're grown-ups. We get to make choices now about who we are and how we are going to be in this world. So that is it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again in a few days. Okay. Mwah.